Chico was born in 1944. Of his 18 siblings, only 6 lived for long, including him. Already at the age of 9 did Chico start working as a robber tapper, like his father. While Chico was growing up, he had 3 different teachers. His father, who taught him his work and to respect the trees of the forest itself, taught him the wonders and dangers of everything inside it. And last, a friend of his father called Ecludes Tavora. He taught Chico about the outside world and to read better. But problems at his home suppressed him. His 42-year-old mother was then pregnant for the 19th time, and one night she began to bleed. Chico ran to get help, but when he returned, she was already dead. The same year, his elder brother and one of his sisters died, and his father was becoming a cripple. Suddenly, Chico was responsible for the family, and he was only 16. The robber tappers had one big problem. Financially, they were trapped. It didn't matter how hard they worked, they still owed more and more money to their bosses, and too many trees in the rainforests were being cut down. The government believed that the quickest way to make money for Brazil was to cut down the trees and build cattle ranches. Most of the ranchers who came did not have any right to the land, but the robber tappers could do nothing. The government built big new highways into the forest, and many people came to live in this part of Brazil. Because they could not afford to move the wood, they simply burned it. During the burning season, there was smoke all over the Amazon. Without trees in the rainforest, the land gets hotter and hotter. There are fewer and fewer clouds, and therefore less and less rain. Chico Mendes decided to take action. At first, he began to write protest letters to the government. The only things he got back were polite letters, but no action. In the end, Chico and a few other robber tappers decided to fight the cattle ranchers not with words, but with actions. It was called the Empade. Whenever they heard the sound of a chainsaw, the robber tappers marched up to the cutting gang and told them to stop. They did not hurt anybody or steal anything. They wanted to save the rainforest, but they could not do it all on their own. They needed support. The church offered to help them, because the church had decided to fight for the poor people of Brazil. The church set up Christian-based communities, meetings where local workers met once a week to discuss the Bible and politics. If they were to act together, they could force a change in the system and bring peace and justice to the land. Of course, the ranchers did not like this. They sent death threats to the priests and put pressure on the police to arrest them. Some of the ranchers hired assassinators and chose their victims. A tradition in Brazil is that before you kill a man, you tell him he's going to die. This is called an anúncio. One of Chico's best friends received an anúncio in '79. Later the same month, Pinheiro was shot and killed. Pinheiro's body was laid out in the Union Hall for 2 days so that friends could pay their last respects. Part of Chico's job was to travel to cities to tell newspapers what was happening in the rainforest. Chico learned how important it was to use the media to communicate. The union members realized that the two of the most important things of them was educating and cooperating. So if they learned how to read and write, they could argue better. A woman named Mary, who was a teacher, decided to find out more about the rainforest. She lived in the rainforest for a month and realized that almost none of the robber tappers could read or write. She wanted to change that. Therefore, she decided to build a school. The school began training teachers and more schools opened in the district. However, there were still big problems. Prices in Brazil were rising by 200% a year. So now the robber tappers had to work even harder, because the value of the robber was going down. Chico slowly realized that his fight for the robber tappers was becoming a fight for everybody who lived in the rainforest and for the rainforest too. An area the size of Jutland was burned down every year. And a new highway was also being built right in the middle of the rainforest, which caused even more destruction. Suddenly, attention was drawn to the rainforest, and people in other countries were writing about it. One day, a satellite took a picture of the rainforest, and the result was terrifying. 7,600 fires was burning in the forest just that day. 44 million tons of smoke and gas was going up in the atmosphere. This was no longer just a Brazilian problem. This was a world problem. Finally, the rest of the world started to take the rainforest seriously. Journalists and filmmakers from all around the world traveled to Brazil to capture this horrifying problem. Because the rainforest had gotten so much attention, the ranchers grew even angrier at Chico. They started to send him death threats. They murdered Chico's friends, and Chico now was on their death list. Therefore, he got bodyguards to look after him, because Chico would not leave town. He would not give up or stop fighting for the rainforest. In the middle of the Brazilian rainforest, his little home was placed. And inside, his wife and 2 children were preparing for supper. He and his 2 bodyguards, in the middle of a game, didn't realize the 2 men creeping into the backyard. Christmas in the Brazilian rainforest is very hot, and one evening, Chico went to the outhouse in the backyard to take a shower. He turned on his flashlight and the sound of a shotgun fired. He fought for his life, and so did his bodyguards, but it was too late. Chico Mendes was dead. Hundreds of other men had died like Chico, and nobody had ever been found guilty of the murders. But this time, it did not take them long. 2 men were arrested and charged with the murder of Chico. Though the actual trial took place 2 years later, Chico Mendes lived and died for the rainforest and its workers. He was a brave man who put the forest first. As he once said, "I don't want flowers at my funeral, because I know they would be taken from the forest."
Chico Mendes. Chico Mendes. Chico Mendes. Chico Mendes.
It's a story about a man named Chico. He fought for the glory, and he wouldn't just let go. He worked as a tree trapper and collected all the latex. He didn't need a ladder to get to the apex.
There was a guy called Chico Mendes, yeah, you all know that. He was brutally murdered by some cattle rangers mad. His son punched in the breast with a gun. They even fronted him, but he refused to run. He was loyal to his friends, he always took up the fight against the cattle rangers. He fought for his rights to work in the forest, collecting all the rubber, so he could greet his family with a daily supper.
He could tap rubber, just like his father. He was soon to discover how the wood got slaughtered. He had 3 different teachers who taught him about the forest. They better join the teachers that attracted many tourists.
Yeah, Chico had no money cause his boss got lucky. All the tappers worked hard and didn't get a penny for hours and hours, yeah, over and over. They tapped all the sap from the trees and the solar, so he started a ride. It was called an MP, cause he had had enough of being called a poor slave. He tried to stop the cutters from cutting down the trees, so he could save the forest and lower the degrees. Hold on,
Chico Mendes. Chico Mendes. Chico Mendes. Chico Mendes.